Hey folks, it's John, and you ought to know why a quarantine tank could end up saving you a lot of money and a lot of heartache. Here's the scenario. You're at your favorite fish store, one that you've been dealing with for years and have all the trust in the world, and you see that fish. You know the one I'm talking about, that one that you just have to have. Like I said, you've been buying from this place for a while, so you don't have any reason to suspect anything could be wrong with the fish. You bring the fish home, acclimate it, and introduce it to the other fish, and everything seems fine. This kind of seems like the same story I told last week, doesn't it? Well, trust me, it's not. So everything seems fine. The fish are all getting along, and you don't feel like you have anything to worry about. Now, trust me, folks, I'm not trying to scare you here. Most of the time, this is going to be the case, and everything's going to be fine. But sometimes, there's a problem with the new fish that you couldn't see coming. The fact is, you have no idea what that new fish might have. They might be carrying some type of parasite or bacterial infection that can eventually rear its ugly head. And when it does, it could not only take that fish, but could take a bunch, if not all, of your other fish with it. Now, I know what you're thinking. I've been buying fish from this place for years. I never have anything to worry about. Their fish are clean. You're probably right, but it only takes that one time. The fact is, even the most reputable retailers have no control over what the fish they bring in have been exposed to. A lot of these retailers are bringing in their fish from farms all over the world, and there's no way they can be certain that the fish are completely clean. I know. What about shops like Aquarium Co-op and Flip Aquatics that quarantine all their fish? Well, shops like those two are few and far between. If you live near them and can get fish from them, consider yourself lucky. Most shops, probably 95% of them, don't have the facility to quarantine all of their new fish that they have coming in. They have 150, 200 tanks. Where in the world are they going to quarantine all of these fish? It's just not feasible. So let's assume you don't have a local shop that quarantines their fish. How do you ensure that the fish you buy from them are safe and are not going to infect your entire tank with something? Well, that's where a quarantine tank of your own comes in. Having a small extra tank running that you can use as a quarantine tank would solve this whole issue and make sure that you never have the worst case scenario happen to you. This doesn't need to be a giant tank with huge filtration and expensive lighting. It doesn't have to be anything even close to that. Just a small tank with a sponge filter and whatever old light you have laying around. It doesn't have to be fancy. The great thing about having a quarantine tank is that you don't have to use it exclusively for quarantining new fish. You can also use it for medicating a sick fish, or if you have that surprise batch of fry show up, it'll be a great place to stick them so they don't get eaten by the other big fish. So how do you quarantine? How long, and do you need to medicate the fish? Well, depending on who you talk to, some would say 2 weeks and some would say 30 days. My opinion is 2 weeks will be fine. It gives you a chance to observe the fish, make sure they're eating good, and appear healthy. As far as treating the tank, again, it depends on who you talk to. Some will say treat the tank with erythromycin, general cure, or an ick medication, or a combination of all three, just to be on the safe side. While I don't disagree with this, in some cases it can be overkill. But if you've got a big tank with 25 adult discus in it that are worth thousands of dollars, and you bought 4 more to put in with them, I'm not sure there's such thing as overkill. If it were me, I'd overkill the shit out of that situation. So there you go, now you know why having a quarantine tank can save you a ton of heartache and possibly money and save a bunch of lives. We put out a new episode of You Oughta Know every single week. This is quick information, short little videos to give you a little bit of something every single week. If you like this kind of content and you want to see more, click the subscribe button down below, hit the bell next to it so you get notified, because you don't want to miss these episodes and all the other stuff that we're doing too. We're having a lot of fun. So thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to talking to you again next week when I'm going to tell you something else you ought to know.